Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the people who make this possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. So let's just be upfront right off the top. This is a non-spoiler reaction episode to the season finale of The Acolyte. And first off, I do want to kind of tip my hat to the patrons of the podcast that shared their predictions with me, because a lot of them were actually kind of on the mark. I won't say which predictions were correct because, again, we're going to preserve the non-spoiler situation here. But I got to say, I was surprised by the finale in terms of what it did and did not do. Ultimately, they did try to reinforce the idea that the Jedi may be trying to do the right thing, but the way that they're doing it isn't necessarily the greatest, and it does kind of raise the question of whether the ends justify the means. There are confrontations that happen, and I have to say, I was expecting or hoping for certain confrontations and did not get them. And so I'm just kind of going, all right, so do I decide that I am disappointed by that? Or do I just say, well, that's the story they wanted to tell? I'm not entirely sure at this point. I'm going to have to wait and give it a second watch and see what I think. In terms of one of the things that we talked about how Leslie Headland has created a true High Republic series in that no character is safe, and that is definitely something that carries through to the finale, I'll say that. And it is pretty clear by the way that this ends that Leslie Headland has a broader vision for The Acolyte as a series. It was not planned as a one-season situation. But for everything that happened in the 7 episodes that preceded this, ultimately this does make sense as a finale. There is a moment, and we'll talk about it when we get into spoilers, where it seems like things are going to go one way and then they go another, and it doesn't quite make sense why the decision is made to go from one direction to another in that moment. But again, that may be something that feels a little better on a second viewing. But I think as a whole, the story stands, and I'm intrigued to see what happens with a season 2 situation. Already on social media, people are advocating for a renewal announcement for season 2 of The Acolyte, and I think it deserves it based on everything that they laid out for us and how they handled the finale. It is one of those situations where, you sit with a Star Wars series, you sit with Star Wars storytelling, and you analyze and you try to project where you think things are going to go. And sometimes when you get a little too invested in these things, then if things don't go the way that you think they're going to go, to paraphrase Luke in The Last Jedi, then it does create the opportunity for disappointment or things like that. And I think that's the thing that ultimately I'm trying to work on in my head, is that that did not go the way I thought it was going to go, and that may actually be perfectly fine. And so it's just something that we're gonna have to sit with and consider as we give it a second viewing. But they definitely set up interesting possibilities for season 2, and that I am very grateful for. So ultimately it is a cohesive statement. There are some fascinating things that happen in the finale. We will talk about them, but right now, I think overall satisfied with the way things played out. And I'd love to hear what you think about it too. So if you're catching this on YouTube, then comments are right there. If you're catching this on Spotify, Q&A sessions right there. Catching this anywhere else, the blog post for this show's episode at SW7x7.com has the ability to capture your comments. Let me know what you thought. Non-spoiler for this particular one. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We'll get into spoiler stuff tomorrow. But for now, if you enjoy the show, please help me spread the word about it. You can do that by just telling people the show exists. You can do it by telling the algorithms with your likes and your reviews and your subscribes and your follows. And you can even help me as an independent creator continue to produce this podcast. And you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7x7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.